Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Manchester Digital Confidence Masterclass. So I'd firstly like to thank Becky and the team at Manchester Digital for introducing me to this talk, and I'm really looking forward to spending the next 60 minutes exploring a little bit of a toolkit and a bit of my own experience with you. You can find me on LinkedIn under K Little Ales and also on Twitter under the Sassy Northern Monkey, because I am that. I've set up an hashtag which is digital and tech skills to support Manchester Digital, so feel free to tweet throughout the day. Okay, so really looking forward to today. So what do I know about the art of mastering self-confidence? Quite a lot, actually. Prior to this, I was stood behind this desk practicing my Superman power stance, because that's what gets me through, psyching myself up, because I also, as 7.8 billion human beings, suffer from imposter syndrome myself, so it's just what makes us human. I'd like to share a story with you before we begin, to put a little bit of context into why I think it's really important that we build self-confidence and become more aware of ourselves. So 3 years ago, I was sat twiddling my thumbs in my apartment in the city of Manchester city centre. I'd had a really tough time. So I'd lost my job. I'd worked for 2 months as a consultant and didn't get paid from a company. I'd lost 2 friends and I was rock bottom. And I do believe that there's no such thing as luck. I believe that we make our own luck. And that day, I was having a really tough day. I am a big fan of LinkedIn. I happened to look on LinkedIn and noticed a gentleman called Adam Brown, who was the director of apprenticeship at Cognition, talking about culture and mindset. And I commented on this LinkedIn post, and Adam Brown, great guy, he collaborated with me and invited me into Cognition. And I happened to be sat in Cognition's offices today. I don't directly work with them, but I consult with them. I met Adam, and I also met the team. There were 200 people roughly within the building. And I don't know about yourselves, but you know when you walk in somewhere, you pick up on a vibe. It was buzzing, the people were learning, but everybody seemed happy. And I just left an environment where, let me be really honest and brutally honest, people were not that happy. So I looked around and I thought, is this genuine? Absolutely, it was genuine. And I happened to observe a lady called Leona, who's a mentor and a tutor at Cognition. And I observed a skill that she had of teaching people a certain technique in learning to become a junior developer. So anyway, I spent the day at Cognition. I met up with the CEOs there, David Muir and Andy Lord at that time, and left that evening, went home, scrambled around on my keyboard, and I decided to write an article about what I'd witnessed. And I'd witnessed a really good learning environment where the tutors seemed confident, they seemed very open to be vulnerable and say they were struggling with things, as well as the students. So I'd written an article about this 70-20-10 theory. Now, if any of you are from a learning and development background, which I am, that'll resonate itself. It's about how people learn in their environment. And most people do learn from doing. So anyway, I'd written the article and I was invited into Cognition. And as I say, I don't believe in luck. You make your own luck. So the luck that I made for myself there is 3 years later, I'm now working with Cognition, and I've built purposeful training to deliver as part of their curriculum. So I deliver resilience and imposter syndrome workshops. I'm soon going to be delivering a public speaking workshop with them, and you're more than welcome to come on that. That's a free session. I'll speak to Becky about that afterwards. But my point is, I'm making stuff up as I'm going along here. So as an adult, nobody tells you what you should be doing. And I think when you have a tough period that's relentless, you are going to suffer from a feeling of being a fraud. You are going to lose your confidence, because when you've had relentless setbacks, it's just human nature to think, do you know what, is this going to get any better? Now, this may resonate with yourself. Some of you at the moment may be looking for work, and we've placed a poll onto this call today, so we'll discuss that shortly. But let me just remind you, the Superman power stance that I did at the beginning of this call that you didn't witness, if I wouldn't have mentioned that to you, you probably wouldn't guess that I was nervous 2 minutes before this call, before the wonderful Becky sat and spoke to me and calmed my nerves down. So everybody suffers from imposter syndrome. I think the important thing today that we're going to explore is, how do you recognise when you feel like a fraudster, or you're fearing whatever it is that you're going through? And how do you stop and reframe that? So I'm going to explain that to you. We're accountable for living our best lives, okay? And if that means that you have to work on your confidence, then so do that. Confidence comes from practicing and reframing against any negative dialogue that you may actually make up in your own mind. Because let's be honest, we can make some wonderful stories up that aren't ever going to happen, but in our mind they are. So that's a little bit of an introduction about myself, and hopefully it gives you a bit of context as to why I enjoy running these sessions. So we did actually ask you to complete a poll. Now, if you haven't, feel free to do that. On this screen, it's on the right-hand side of the screen, you've got the poll there. If you could answer the questions, that would be great, because we think feedback is really important to get the best out of these sessions. So some of the questions that we asked there, and these are multiple choice, are just really finding out what your current situation is. So are you looking for work within the tech and digital sector? Is it something that you're currently considering learning with a specific skill within the sector? Are you unsure whether you want to stay in the sector? Curious about it? Have you been made redundant? A lot of my colleagues have. I know I was. And have you experienced furlough or other? So if you could participate in that poll, that would be really helpful. And then maybe at the end of the call, if we've got enough time, we can also have a conversation about that. And I think at the moment, if we're really honest, I've had several conversations with colleagues today and the last week. We're just coming into winter. We've had a dramatic period of change over the last few months. It's almost like we've reconditioned our behaviours. So let's be honest, at the moment, it's tough. So I think the more open we are when we're having these conversations, the better it is. And I think whatever you're experiencing, maintaining a positive mindset and feeling confident is going to be challenging at the moment. Okay. Now, this is just a diagram that I use when I do a lot of senior leadership training and any coaching. And imposter syndrome, it's something that is spoken about quite a lot. And this is a perfect example of person in the middle of this slide is suggesting to Dr. Adams, as a social psychologist, that she's one of the top in the world. Yet that doctor, who's a psychologist, is saying, don't be silly. There are lots of scholars who have made things more significant than I have. So how you see yourself is definitely not how others see you. And we're going to be talking about that. Now, this is something that I share quite frequently, and it just gives you a little bit of food for thought about where you may be on what I refer to as the trauma triangle. Now, the word trauma is a little bit dramatic. However, we can reframe that or reword it and just class it as a tough time. So we'll class that as a period of change, let's say. Okay, so this triangle represents, on a daily basis, we have a routine. We do things without thinking about them. So that might be you get up in the morning, you're brushing your teeth, you've had breakfast, you drive to work, you think, how did I get there? Okay, it's the things that you do without even thinking about. And then every now and again, you'll have a ritual, and that may be that you could be challenged slightly. So if you're thinking about or considering coming into the sector of digital or tech, the challenge there may be that you're going to have to write a CV. So earlier on, if you were on the call with the wonderful Dan Russell, he spoke about, I suppose, demonstrating that you're responsible and assertive through the words that you're showcasing on your CV. So the ritual in our lives at the moment might be that, for example, the pubs are closing on Monday. I'm gutted, I don't know about yourselves, not that I drink a lot. But the ritual there may be that things are changing daily or weekly at the moment. And in the middle of all of that, some of you may be looking for work. So it's quite a challenging time. So the ritual relates to you may be failing at things because you're trying new things. Failure is feedback, and failure is, it's the way that we respond to failure means that we're going to try and try again, but maybe try things differently. And what relevance that has to confidence is most people at a certain age stop trying out new things because they don't feel as confident as they were as an 11-year-old riding that bike that they had to learn and ride and scrape the knee on the way. And at the moment, if I relate to the trauma, the part of the top part of the triangle, trauma is where we've had the rug pulled from beneath our feet. And so 4 out of my 10 friends that I've spoken to on a call today, a coaching call, have lost the job. And the trauma is that is out of your control. There's nothing you can do about it. My point here is don't stay in the top part of the triangle for too long, because what happens is you're going to have to really build up your confidence again and rewrite your whole story. So when we have change, when it's negative change, we sometimes create self-limiting beliefs, and we really have to redefine our routine. And at the moment, we are redefining our routine. And with that comes the knockback of self-confidence, and that the feeling of being a fraud is more apparent now than it ever has been, and especially when you're trying something new. So just remember, you're a human being. Everybody is doing it at different stages. Some of you are trying to teach, you've done homeschooling, God bless you. And some of you have been trying to work from home. We're not working from home, we're trying to work from home. So we have a lot of challenges at the moment. Okay, I hope that resonates itself with you, because it's something that I have to kind of remind myself at the moment. So if I was to put myself in the triangle, I'd put myself into the ritual stage, where at the moment I lack routine, and I love routine. My family may disagree with that, but I love routine when it comes to a workplace, a place of work. So just some really relevant information that I wanted to share with you really is that the digital skills in the UK is really lacking the following. So 200 CEOs were interviewed of their businesses, and they said that they were really fearful, and they suffered from quite a lot of imposter syndrome themselves around being a senior leader and not understanding the digital world. So switch that. Think about yourself. If you're applying for a job, your employer is probably just as nervous as you are about a few things. And some of these are, if I look at the bottom right of this screen, I hope you can see it in the way I can. It says generalist digital skills. That could be content writers, people working in learning and development, junior developers, for example, cybersecurity. These are really big percentages of where there are skill gaps. And don't forget, this has come from 200 CEOs that are saying, you know what, technology has moved forward really quickly, but I'm not sure if we have. I'm not sure if we're in a stable enough place at the moment. So that is food for thought. Earlier on in the week, I spoke about transferable skills. And when you are discussing your own transferable skills, again, you have to create, I suppose, a belief with yourself that there's things that are just natural abilities and skills to you, but you have to really work on and develop the things that you may struggle with. But absolutely hone in on your own natural abilities and use that totally to your advantage when you're discussing things or profiling your potential new client. Okay. And that also goes for if you're thinking about doing an apprenticeship, a degree or something that then will enable you to get into work. It's the same thing. Understand the profile of that culture and understand where their pain points are as well. So fear. So I've just touched on imposter syndrome, just lightly there. So fear, I've studied quite a lot of work around fear. And if you've not got the book, or if you want to get your teeth into something that's going to help you, I'm going to recommend that you watch the YouTube or read the book of Michael Heppel, How to Be Brilliant in 90 Days. He's a life coach. He's an NLP therapist. He's absolutely fantastic for what he does. He talks sense. And what Michael Heppel says is that fear is absolutely false evidence appearing real. So just think about those words and just listen to them. As human beings, we have what we call meta programs. And what happens is if we're faced with something that's new, challenging, or a change, we do this thing where our brain works in a funny way. It taps into the subconscious and it says, okay, you've had this experience before, okay, this may happen. And then you start making a story up. And that's what happens because we're human beings. So fear is absolutely false evidence appearing real. And we do fear change, and we do fear that a challenge will probably be something that we can't deal with. But something else that I want you to think about, and some of the research that I did to put this talk together today, was I spoke to a lot of people in the industry already. And interestingly enough, I work with a lot of introverts, okay? And introverts are great. They're normally my best mates, because you can't have two people that talk as much as I do. And so introverts are often the observers. They tend to get their energy from doing things and being pragmatic. So if you are an introvert and you're looking for work, then great, because you're going to see things that probably the extroverts don't see. My point here is, it's worth considering, what is your default, what is your preference as a person? And quite often, courage is the one thing that helps you to overcome fear. So what you're going to have to do is reframe how you think about yourself when you're speaking to your recruiter, your apprenticeship company, and look at, okay, well, how would I deal with a difficult situation? Put yourself in the shoes of the company and think about, what is it? What are their pain points? Why are they recruiting people at the moment? So I call this your dial. I call this turn up the dial. So if you're an extrovert, you may want to turn down the dial, as I do quite often, and think about when and what you're saying. What you're saying and when you're saying it. And again, when you're an introvert, it's great. It just means that you're going to have to work on becoming slightly more assertive when it's necessary and not overbearing. So we've looked at a little bit of imposter syndrome. You've heard a bit of my story. And this is what I had to do way back 3 years ago when I'd had that tough time. I had some life coaching, and my life coach at that time, which I've studied since, took me through this. So grab a pen and paper if you want to, but we will be sending you these details afterwards as well. So I know for a fact that this works. And the colleagues and friends that I coach with know that this works as well. So this is proven to work. Okay, so if you ask yourself what it is that you want to achieve. Okay, so I'm going to use me as an example. I want to achieve more autonomy. I want to work a 4-day week, don't we all? I actually need more work at the moment, but I want to work a 4-day week. And I want to be happy and I want to feel fulfilled. That's me personally. So just stop a minute and think about that yourselves. What is it that you want to achieve? And then the thing that's really important is, and this is quite clever, this, get really clear on your reasons, what it is that you want to achieve and why they are more important than your fears. And the way that I deal with this, and we do this quite a lot when we're coaching, is you write down your fears, and at the side of that, it's the reasons why you want to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. That might be working in tech, digital, it might be going for an interview, might be applying for a degree or an apprenticeship, whatever it is, look at your reasons versus your fears. This bit is quite, some of you may struggle with this if you're not as emotive. Decide how you want to feel. So what I mean by that is, if you just stop and pause a moment and just picture your life in a year's time, picture your life in 5 years' time. What do you want to be doing? Where do you want to be sat? Who do you want to be with? What do you want to feel like? That is a good enough reason for you to combat your fear. 9 out of 10 times plus more, people have a catalyst of change, why they want to change career and direction. Something really crappy has possibly happened to 9 out of those 10 people. So what you've got to do is grab hold of that and just think, right, I'm going to use this to my advantage. The visualization's a really strong and compelling way of combating fear and imposter syndrome. So if you act as if you've got the job already, and you act in your mind like you're working in the place you want to work in, and visualize that as a role, when you're getting ready for that interview, or you're preparing yourself for whatever it is to work in this amazing industry, you've already visualized it. What will happen naturally? Your dialogue, your internal dialogue, will talk to anybody, whether that's an interview, whatever it is, as if you're actually living and working in those shoes at the moment. So it's really powerful stuff. And then the last thing is refreshing every negative thought with a positive glimpse of how it would feel to be where you will be. So you're telling yourself you're going to be there. And let's be honest, Some goals do not have a deadline. So get it in your head now that you might not get the first job, the 6th job, the 7th job that you go for, but you will get a job. And that relentless kind of mindset is tough. So you're going to have to really pull on your self-determination and your grit. So I hope they're useful. It's a toolkit that I use frequently, and I swear by it. It really, really works. So again, turn up your dial, really think about what it is that you want to achieve, become clearer on your reasons and your purpose, and you will get there. Okay. Just a couple of questions that I want you to think about. I've not got these on the screen, but I thought about these just before the call. I've spent some time today with junior developers, and I told them about this talk. And these were some of the questions that they asked me and they shared with me. And again, I'll send these to Becky afterwards with the workbook, so you can have these as an afterthought and almost like a self-coaching toolkit. So I asked the junior developers what attracted them to the role. Okay. And some of them said that they wanted autonomy, they wanted to work overseas, and they could work wherever they wanted in the world. Some of them said working in a team and individually meant that they could work in a really kind of diverse environment. Okay. And we've got a big mixture of analytical people, expressive people, which I'll explain to you about in a moment. But the one thing that they said, the biggest point that's been raised today, was autonomy is so attractive when you're in a role working in the tech and digital industry. And I was pretty scared 3 years ago about walking in Cognition's door, because I'm not techie and I will not pretend to be techie. If you see my website, you'd know why I say I'm not techie. But if anybody wants to help me with that, I'm all ears. So social styles is something that will help anyone at all that is looking for work. Okay, and this is what I mean by social styles. So David Merrill and Roger Reed were psychologists in the 70s and 80s, made a lot of research around human behavior. And we all have what we call a natural default. It's what our natural tendency is to be under pressure. Okay. So, for example, a lot of people that work in tech are quite analytical, the task focused, the fact orientated, they're really good at problem solving, which seems to be the number one thing that employers are looking for, by the way. Organized. They don't always avoid group work. This is very clinical in the way it describes people, but they tend to work well alone as well as with others. They're a little bit more cautious, which means that you might not get a response straight away from someone if they're analytical. Okay. And they like to be right about things. So my father fits into the analytical bracket, for example, and my mother fits in the amiable bracket. So this is actually used for marriage counselling as well, by the way. My point here is there are some particular personalities that will get on better with others. So when you're looking at job roles or when you're profiling a business, look at their website, look at them on LinkedIn, find the CEO of the company, find out what their aims and objectives are to the best of your ability, and think about, actually, if I'm going into an interview, the person on the top right-hand side who's driven, who's classed as a driver, may seek to be in charge. They might be decisive. So when I'm presenting to them, for example, I might have to be really assertive and share and express return on investment, things that I've done that have actually created an achievement. Now, that might be difficult if you're new to the industry, but believe you me, if you think about something that's a frame of reference that you've done elsewhere that relates to that you are assertive and you are good at decision making and you can work in a team and you can work alone, somebody within that driver box, their personality type, would really appreciate that, because they'll notice that although you've not got the experience that relates to whatever it is that role is, you've certainly got a transferable skill. And that's where your confidence will come from. So this relates to assertiveness. So somebody that's expressive can sometimes express themselves and maybe overly express themselves. They tend to be more intuitive, they're quite creative, they're quite persuasive. So somebody on the expressive default may have to turn the dial down, as in during an interview, just adapt to whoever it is that they're presenting to. And another good thing to do is, if you're preparing for an interview, tap into all of these personality types on your social circle or your work colleagues and ask them for feedback. Present to them, present to someone that will challenge you. And honestly, it will help you with your interviews. And it helps you not just with interviews, but just in life itself. I think we've all got blind spots. We've all got things that we don't, wonderful things that we don't know about ourselves. And we've also got things that maybe we need to improve on. So when it comes to self-confidence, it definitely does help you. So just a reminder, okay, that in 2015, the world has changed. So this is some data from the World Economic Forum. So it's a global lens on what transferable skills and what is it that employers are looking for. And I think that this will give you the confidence in knowing that complex problem solving, critical thinking and creativity are the top 3 skills that employers are absolutely looking for. So if you make some research and you have the knowledge and the confidence about the company that you're going to work for, because you've actually looked at the websites and you've worked on it, what you're going to do is you're going to understand the pain points and you're going to understand why they need you to do the job. Now that gives them the confidence that you understand them as an organisation. So my point here is still be you, be an introvert, be an extrovert, be expressive, however you are as a person, but make sure that you know that you understand them, and make sure that when you're talking about those top 10 skills, cognitive flexibility, for example, just make sure that they know that you're self-aware and you know that that adaptability is what they're looking for as an organisation. So assertiveness does play a big part. Got a little bit of data here to share with you. So I interviewed 200 people on LinkedIn to research in building this presentation today. And just to give you a bit of confidence in knowing this, 200 CEOs, and one was from Google, one was from Microsoft, and 20 were from different tech companies in London and Manchester, said this to me. They are suffering from decreased productivity, inability to implement time costing saving technology. They're less agile. They don't have a skill set where people are as adaptable. Remember this. Reduced competitiveness, so there are other companies that are as competitive as they are, and lower profitability. So bear those things in mind. And again, I'm going to be sending these details to Becky, so you've got some post work. Bear those things in mind. So when you're building your conversation or your compelling statement to speak to your future employer, you're very, very aware that these are challenges that they're running into. So I hope that that's useful. Things have not changed dramatically since 2015, but the world's changed. And I think the digital era, everybody's working from home at the moment, or most people are working from home. So you've got to think about, how it is that you can give the confidence that even though you may not have the experience, but, how can you share your knowledge and your previous experience in a way that sounds assertive and compelling. Something that I talk about frequently is this. So some of you may be really aware of the amazing Professor Carol Dweck, her work. So Carol Dweck has made, she does amazing TED Talks, and she's made some research and science. The science of a growth mindset is that there's no fixed way of learning. And what Carol Dweck says is that failure is an opportunity to grow. If you have a fixed mindset, failure is the limit of your abilities. So a fixed mindset is somebody that would say something along the lines of, oh, I'm just naturally good at that. I'm not really good at learning coding, for example, or I've never really done content writing. I've never done digital content. I'm going to give it a miss. So it's something around, Carol Dweck states that when you have and adopt a growth mindset, you can learn to do anything that you want. Don't think about the end goal, just think about the learning process. Challenging will help you to grow. Your efforts and your attitude will absolutely determine your abilities. And feedback is constructive. Ask for feedback. If you're scared for asking feedback because you don't want to be criticised, you really need to work on that stuff. That will not help you with your confidence. And your confidence will grow from accepting failure is just moving more forward towards you succeeding and living the life that you deserve. So trying new things is an absolute biggie when it comes to growth mindset and your own self-confidence. So other things that are really apparent, and I speak to a lot of people around this when we talk about self-limiting beliefs, we have what we call a cognition. So we have a way of thinking naturally. And that comes from years of being conditioned and years of experience, some good, some bad. Now, we all have natural ways of thinking, feeling and acting. So, for example, in my younger years, I used to want to be liked by absolutely everybody. I seeked approval for quite a lot of things. And unfortunately, the behaviour that come with that is that I excessively tried to please others. And that meant that I avoided my assertiveness, which meant that I had low confidence. So if you want to do things perfectly, then you will procrastinate and you may perform slower and you may become inefficient. So perfectionism can be the killer of confidence as well, because you never think that your work's good enough. So if you meet somewhere in the middle and relate to the growth mindset, making mistakes is not too bad. You can learn from them. You're going to be willing to try it time and time again and see how it goes. That will help you with your confidence. Now, I challenge this. So you probably, if you're on LinkedIn or Twitter, you'll see a lot of people talking about the snowflake generation and the millennials. And it's said that they kind of seek instant gratification. I disagree. I think you can't put people in a quadrant and say that everybody's a certain way. I think the younger generation want the world to be a better place to live, if I'm perfectly honest. I spend 70% of my time with the younger generation and I learn from them. But for any generation that wants something here and now, it can be quite an addictive behaviour. And those people that want that self-gratification or instant gratification, apologies, they're the people that will probably never have that fulfillment. So you've got to find your balance. You've got to find out about what it is that's really making you tick as a human being. And if you can get the growth mindset adopted and keep practicing it, mistakes are never going to be too bad. Your self-confidence will grow. Share that stuff with your future employer. Share the fact that you're not scared to give things a go. That is one of the most employable attributes and attitudes that your employers are looking for at the moment. So I'm going to summarise, and I just want to make sure that at least you spend half an hour over the next week rewriting your list of whys and looking at your reason and facing the fear and looking at if there is fear or I'm feeling like a fraudster, when does that happen? What are my triggers? Go tackle that made up fear, and it is time to apply the growth mindset and design your own compelling statement. So make yourself employable and talk about the amazing things that you already do and think about the amazing things that you can do in the future. I'd like to thank you for your time. I hope that you found it useful. And I think for me, confidence is something that we can only practice. I have to work at it every single day of my life. So thank you to Becky for introducing me to you all, and I hope that you enjoyed it.
Thanks, Kay. That was brilliant. I think there's some really, really valuable tips for everyone there. And I really enjoy the fact that you're really honest about how you felt before you started the presentation. And I think that's something, you know, as you've been talking about imposter syndrome, we all feel it. We just don't necessarily look like we're feeling that. So never feel like you're on your own with any of that. So I'm just going to jump over to the chat. If anyone does have any questions for Kay, if you can just put them in the chat and we'll spend a few minutes going through them. The first one we've got here is from Malcolm. He's put, how does Merrill and Reed compare with Myers-Briggs or the 5-factor personality model?
Brilliant question. So I'm fond of both. And for those of you that aren't aware, so the Myers-Briggs goes into a lot more detail. Personally, I challenged it a little bit because mine came up ENTJ, and people that know me say, you're absolutely not that, Kay. So I think Myers-Briggs is very useful if it's used with I suppose, a consultant that really knows what they're talking about, and they coach you effectively with it. So that's like a piece of development. I think for me personally, the Myers-Briggs is simple because it's just built into 4 quadrants. And for me as well, it's really important that we don't put people in boxes, but we use it as a guide. So it's more of a guide and a self-awareness that use it for yourself, but also use it for others. And that is absolutely emotional intelligence. So I'm fond of both. I don't have a preference, but I think the biggest difference is for anybody that's just kind of tapping into that world. I think Myers-Briggs, it's just a little bit, Marilyn Reed is just a little bit more simple in the way that it's laid out.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've come across quite a few of these in my time, and I think it's all about realizing that it doesn't matter what box it puts you into or what letters it says you are. I think it's that fact that we're all different. So even if we're going for the same goals, we go about it in different ways. So it's kind of something like, don't compare yourself to what other people are doing, and don't get frustrated when other people don't respond the same way. We're all kind of different, even if we're going for exactly the same thing. So do we have any other questions? Has anyone got anything else? Obviously, we are going to send out, I've said this at the end of every session, I'm sure everyone's sick of saying, but we will share the videos from these sessions. Kay's got some handouts, which we'll make available. So those will be coming out into an email to everyone on Monday as well. So there will be the handouts, so you can work on that separately. And we will share the videos. But if there's any other questions, we've got a couple of minutes now where we can run through them. Otherwise, as Kay said, make sure you connect with her on Twitter. I'm sure if you've got anything that you want to ask her direct, she'll kind of answer those as well. So let me just go through. We've got a couple of questions in. I never feel that I know enough to apply for jobs. I've changed career recently and have 15 years work experience, and I constantly diminish what I have. How do I overcome that?
Brilliant point. I was similar probably 2 years ago, actually, myself. So 15 years experience, because I can't see the person, it's a bit difficult, but I suppose if it was in one sector, or you've got a lot of experience and knowledge in 15 years though, haven't you there? So my advice there, and I'm not an expert when it comes to this, but what I would do and what my colleagues would do is write down a list of your top 3 skills that are natural to you. Work on those first of all. Hone in on your positive stuff first of all, okay? So, for example, some of you might be really good at being analytical. And hone in on that and relate that to, okay, so the job that I'm going for may benefit from this because of X, Y, and Z. And I think the thing here is concentrating on your strengths first of all and aligning that to the business needs, and then work your way through. Right? Well, I've not got experience with, let's say, junior developing. I've not got experience with that yet, and I've not done the coding course yet. But for example, because I'm analytical and because I can work in a team and I'm good at problem solving, that means that I absolutely would grasp that. So I think it's going back to the slide, and it's going to be sent out. It's about understanding what it is that you're naturally good at and what it is that you will absolutely have to work on with that growth mindset to get to where you need to get to. But believe you me, if I can work with tech companies, anybody can.
I would echo as well, there was a session that we did, I think it was on Tuesday, one of the Switch to Digital panels, and there was a guy called Louis Garbut who's just made the switch. So he's been a product owner for 3 weeks. Yeah. He talks a lot about how the journey that he went on to understand what his transferable skills were. So if you weren't here on Tuesday when the email comes out next week, go back and have a look at that video, because I think he has some really valuable advice about trying to identify what the skills are that you're currently using, how to feel good about those, and how to kind of move into your next role. So it's definitely worth kind of having a look at those. We've got another question here from Chris. Okay, do employers look at transferable skills on a CV? I've got a lot of experience in a particular field, but I also have transferable skills. It's hard to get these across though. Any tips?
I have actually, yeah. So I don't know if you managed to watch Dan's CV writing, actually. It might be worth going back to that when Becky shares that, because it was a really outstanding talk that he did. But for me, so most people within the first 30 seconds make their mind up about a person when they look at them. Most employers, when they look at the personal statement on the first line of it, for example, so if you open up a CV, you'll get the email address and then underneath there. For me, that is your opportunity to share your transferable skills at that stage, because it's the first thing that somebody's going to read. I mean, certainly that's what I've done with my CV. I still have to use the CV as a consultant. And so I had to go for a bid to work with a football company. I won't say who they are because I can't. And 10 other people were in the same boat. They'd actually put their CVs together. My transferable skill was that I'd worked with an ambiguous business before. I won't say who that was. But the fact that I was able to navigate through ambiguity, maybe I should work for the government, move over Boris. That's for another day, Becky. I think the thing what I'm trying to say is make it really clear in the first 30 seconds of someone reading your CV that you're resilient and you've got skills in there that might not be on the competencies.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got another question here. Will the video of the talk that didn't happen on Monday be out? Yes, we've got a video of that. So that's going to be shared with you. Like I said, we'll send an email out to everyone on Monday, and that'll have links to all the videos which are going to be hosted on our YouTube channel. So we'll send you that link on Monday. Let me have a look. Probably slightly off topic for this session, but would love to understand more about the top 10 skills list. In particular, complex problem solving being top over both periods. What kind of problems, what they have done to try and fill the gap so far, is it working, and so on and so forth. Is there anywhere that you can recommend to go and research that, or is it a Google job? Okay.
Yeah, do you know what? So I don't know if you might have read this, Becky. There's a book by Dan Pink called Drive. And it talks about intrinsic motivation, and it's all about that side of the brain where it's critical thinking and creative thinking. If you don't like reading, and if you can't concentrate for longer than 10 minutes like me, get the audio, and it's absolutely amazing. Listen to Dan Pink first of all, and then there's some stuff that Dan Pink shares about. Absolutely, it's about the intrinsic motivation. It's about autonomy, problem solving, and attaching a purpose to it. So yeah, I'd go for Dan Pink.
Perfect. We've got another question here. So, and this has come up quite a lot this week. So what about ageism? How do we address it? I've not had a permanent job since 2011, but every time these gaps stop progress in previous role, 30 years work, I've been, sorry, my chat keeps jumping. I've been marketing manager, project manager, business analyst and trainer. So obviously, how do you overcome ageism? Do you think there's ageism within the sector, and how do you overcome that?
There's absolutely ageism. I'm knocking on towards 50 now. So I'm spending a lot of money on moisturiser at the moment. But at the moment, I think what I'm working on is I've got mentors that are younger than me. Okay. And I think for anybody that's a little bit of an older generation, and it is scary out there, get a mentor that's younger than you and learn with them and ask for feedback. So if I ask for feedback, for example, I'd get feedback from someone younger that's going to be my mentor, someone that will challenge you. It's called good cop, bad cop, and be challenged, but put yourself in challenging situations with a younger generation. It's the only way that you're going to seek and gain experience, because honestly, you won't get it any other way, I don't think.
And there are, I think, this has come up a few times, there are definitely opportunities regardless of age in this industry, as Kay has said. And I think it's about maybe jumping back to some of the points in that presentation around that kind of growth mindset of believing what is possible and believing, the structure that you had about think about where you want to get to and how you want to get to that. There will be some issues that you'll experience along the way, I'm sure, but kind of mindset will really help kind of overcome some of those as well.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Okay, we've got another question here. So my first role following a career switch has really knocked my confidence as I got negative feedback but no support how to improve. Any specific things I could work on this as I keep going back to it? Like, so, thinking they were right.
Yeah. So I think the first thing here is kind of acknowledging that you got some feedback that was negative. So first of all, that's not your fault that was delivered in the incorrect way. That's not your fault. Get that into your mind. So that is an experience which is good for you, because you can now use that in a job interview and talk about the fact that was your catalyst, and that has absolutely pushed you towards going forward and trying out new things. But again, what I would do is I'd get mentors. I've got 3 mentors, and 2 of them are in tech, one's not in tech, and I have a catch up with them every fortnight. Get yourself out there, be proactive and speak to other people, because the more you fear it and the more that you go on that downhill spiral of thinking, well, what if they said was true? No, do you know what? You've got to be accountable for your own actions. So go out there and get mentors, and then get that not everybody's an extrovert that wants to do that. But believe you me, I fear it every time I get feedback from one in particular. But that person is the person that's helped me change.
Yeah. And I think just going back to it's kind of a different point that you made in the presentation about failure being part of that journey, and not that this is a failure, but feedback like this and knockbacks are part of that journey. And I think it's once you have those, it does kind of build your confidence. I think the other thing I'd say as well is trust what you believe. That's some negative feedback you've had, and it might be valid, but that is one person's opinion. Could think of anything else that is positive? Are there any other feedback that you've had from other people in other jobs, in other roles, in other situations that is positive? And maybe start to think about those positive things, as Kate was saying, think about that positive mindset as well. So remember, negative feedback can be good because it can help us grow, but it is also one person's opinion.
I do agree with you, Becky. It's amazing how one person can affect your mojo. It absolutely is. And you sometimes have to, I think you have to be even careful of who your circle of influence is. So you might have people in your life, and it could be friends or family, that have a negative impact on you. Manage it. Sometimes it has to be tough love as well.
Yeah. We've got another question here. How do you get a mentor?
Okay, so I use LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn, I'm just going to have a look now, actually. LinkedIn's got a tool. So I mentor a few people in Newcastle at the moment. I'll send it to Becky, actually. Is that all right, Becky, if I send it to you as part of the post work?
Yeah.
And so you can advertise on LinkedIn that you want to mentor. It's amazing. And Google are actually mentoring at the moment as well, I believe.
There is also, I mean, it is a paid for service, but there is also a network there, a company that are in the Manchester Digital membership called the Wise Up Network. So if you have a look at that, and again, we can share the links to this, but if you have a look for Wise Up, they have a platform that's full of mentors from different backgrounds. And I think as part of that, you can arrange a free sort of 15-minute kind of coffee, even though it's virtual at the moment, but you can arrange a free kind of 15-minute consultation with someone that you think might be a good mentor for you. But that might be a good way to kind of start reaching out and having a look at things as well. So definitely check them out.
Oh, that's good. I'll use that as well. Thank you, Becky.
Let's see, is there any more questions? So you've mentioned that some people can learn whilst doing the job. I was let go from my previous job. I have, average IT skills and have dabbled in programming. Is there any entry-level jobs in the digital industry that can help along with getting paid, or just sign up on the courses?
So I know of a company that I'm working with at the moment. I don't know if it's the type of job that you'd be interested in, but I can certainly introduce you to Sharp Futures.
Sharp Futures are actually in our expo area. So if you're interested, they've got a stand in the expo area. So on the left-hand side, if you take a look on there, you can register your interest. So go into where the chat section is, make sure you're on booth. That'll tell you some more information, but it will also help you register your interest if you are interested in them.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of people that I know that are doing degrees at the moment that are questioning, A, is this degree going to get me to do something that I love? And B, well, I could maybe do it with my degree.
Yeah. And then also, just to add to that, I'd also look at apprenticeships, because once you're in an apprenticeship, you are placed with an employer, so you are placed with a salary. The salaries vary depending on businesses, but it is a way that you can learn on the job whilst getting paid as well. So it's worth having a look. Obviously, there's lots of learning providers in the expo area, but it's worth just Googling and seeing what's out there. There's different programs, different apprenticeship programs, different start dates, different requirements. And I just want to reiterate that these are open to people of all ages. So Manchester Digital, we do run an apprenticeship for software developers.
Brilliant.
A level 4 apprenticeship, but we have people on the last cohort, we had people aged 18 up to, I think, 45, 46. Now, it's not that there's an age restriction, that's just who we had applied for that. So just to reiterate, there are opportunities out there regardless of age, and there are some that come with kind of salaries attached to it as well.
It's great, isn't it? I don't think enough people know about it, Becky, and I was shocked at the fact that you can do it. I'm actually thinking about doing a course with a company, and I won't say because I don't want to show bias, but because I've been scared of tech myself, it's something that I really want to learn, you know, some digital content myself. So yeah, there's no age brackets. That's our own mindset, isn't it?
Absolutely. So if there's no more questions, I'm just going to say a huge thank you to Kay for that presentation.